Good evening, everyone. Welcome back to a new podcast. My name is Ian Said, but most people know me as Tacho. And today I had the pleasure to talk with Mason Charlton, better known as Locus, a Smash 4 legend. Locus had an interesting trajectory through Smash Wii U, starting as a hidden boss in British Columbia with Ryu, to getting amazing results as 2GG events, and getting the recognition as one of, if not the best Smash 4 Ryu Main in history. We're going to talk about his past and present within the community and his notoriety as one of the best Smash coaches in the scene, one of the best Smash prodigies back in Smash 4, and right now getting into TOing and commentary. Locus, how are you?
I'm great. How are you doing?
Oh, thank God this freaking. Oh my God, this time it worked. Sorry. I'm sorry.
All good.
So far so good. This time it worked. So I'm ecstatic that this plan worked. Do you want to start getting with the questions?
Absolutely.
Awesome. So the first thing that I wanted to ask that is something that I normally ask within my podcast. How how long have you been playing Smash, not competitively, and how eventually did you got into the Smash scene?
Smash 64. I didn't actually own the game myself, but one of my friends did, and I played all throughout elementary, all throughout high school. We did like a couple of tournaments every once in a while with just our friends, just for fun. Um, and that was something that we did a lot of throughout high school. And then it was right before I was moving from Saskatchewan to British Columbia. I just had the idea that like maybe I should go to a tournament with one of my friends before I moved out to BC, because I was kind of thinking about maybe going to some tournaments in BC, and also it was just kind of a fun thing to do with my friend before we or before I moved away. So I went to that tournament and I won it. Um, and I had a blast there, and the people were super nice and supportive, and I was just like, dang, this is a lot of fun. Like maybe I should, continue doing this. And then when I managed to move to BC, that's kind of when I um yeah, like started competing for real, and I kind of got kicked around for a while in BC. BC was a lot tougher. Um a lot of really talented players here in BC, so it was a lot more tough, but that's kind of how I got started.
So, are you saying that the first tournament you ever entered, you won it?
Yeah. Um First, like, more kind of like open tournament. There were tournaments that we'd run kind of like every month or so with just our friend group in high school. Um, but those were always kind of like casual, kind of like round robin house tournaments.
Of course.
Um, yeah, so I did happen to win that first one. I remember it was Captain Falcon versus Roy in grand finals. Um, and I was just going for down throw, air dodge, read knee over and over. I was playing Falcon.
Okay.
And I just thought that was the coolest thing. And then I kept on getting hit by down throw, air dodge, read, F smash with Roy in Smash 4.
Damn.
Um, so that was kind of the level we were at. We were just starting like those kind of like air dodge reads and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Um, it's pretty early in Smash 4.
I do remember. Yeah. So where does the tag locus comes from?
Yeah, so it comes from a concept in psychology called locus of control,
Mm-hmm.
which is it's how much you believe that you're in control of your own actions. So if you have an internal locus of control, that's basically saying that you believe that the things that happen in your life and the things that happen to you are a result of your actions,
Okay.
and you're in control of those things. And then an external locus of control is the exact opposite. You think you kind of like believe in destiny, things happen outside of your control that you can't impact.
Mm-hmm.
So that was kind of a reminder to me to always try and have an internal locus of control, and always to um, do my best to control the things that I had control of, and to always just kind of like do my best. And that was kind of my reminder.
Mm-hmm. Wow. I mean, seems. I mean, it's interesting. Not gonna lie.
Mhm.
It's possibly one of the best explanations I've ever heard for a tag. Still kind of far fetched, but pretty cool. Not gonna lie.
Yeah, I think it probably started more as kind of just like a okay, this kind of like sounds cool.
Hmm.
Um, but then I got pretty attached to the meaning behind it afterwards.
Okay,
Um, and things kind of went from there.
makes sense. I mean, it makes a lot of sense. So you said that you started with Falcon. How did you eventually get into playing with Ryu?
So I started with Falcon, and that's kind of where I started. Um, I was able to get like okay results with Falcon.
Hmm.
Nothing super special or anything, but um, and so I played him for a little bit, and then I kind of felt like I was hitting a wall, so I started playing a different character, and that was actually Sonic.
Yeah.
Um, so I played exclusively timeout Sonic as well. I was the kind of Sonic where, rather than like actually taking my optimal punishes, I would just like down throw, taunt, and then just like run away. Um, my thought
Why?
process at that point was kind of just like, okay, it's going to be a lot easier for me if rather than like working super hard, I just um I just let people's attitudes kind of shoot themselves in the foot.
Did it work?
Um yeah, it worked really, really well against a lot of people. There were a lot of people that as soon as they saw Sonic on the character select screen and they saw me just like standing on the other side of the stage, like not engaging, they would just run at me. Um, and Sonic is just so good at dealing with that, with having, all the invincible options that he has with like
Yeah.
spin dash and that sort of thing. Um, and it certainly taught me how to play patiently because I don't think I really had that with Falcon. With Falcon, I was just kind of running in over and over again.
Hmm.
So I eventually hit a wall yet again where I was playing Sonic and I was just like, okay, against the people who don't crack mentally, like I just I didn't have a very strong game plan with the character. So I was like, I'll pick somebody else up. I saw one of the people in my region, a guy by the name of Uber, kind of blowing people up with Ryu
I
and
remember.
killing
Yeah.
people at really early percents. And I was just like, all right, let's try this. And it took a really long time for me to learn the character. I think it took about like 6 months of me playing the character for me to have all the stuff under my muscle memory and to have it all figured out. Um, and then I eventually just kind of stopped playing Sonic when my Ryu was getting a lot of results. My Ryu kind of ended up being that kind of in between where I could run people down and really, really play aggressive.
Hmm.
But against the people who were trying to keep me out, I felt like I was able to keep my cool and play really slow in the same way that I did with Sonic. So it was kind of an interesting combination of the two.
Makes sense. I still remember to this day a clip that Charlie CDK once posted on Twitter saying that Smash 4 Wii U didn't need any skill to be played with and win. Was it really so brain dead? Looking back, how do you feel about this Smash 4 meta surrounding Ryu?
um, so I think there's a hint of truth to that for sure.
Hmm.
The character rewarded um, how do I want to word this without making myself sound awful?
You
um,
can, you can, don't
the
worry.
like the up tilt spam and like that kind of stuff was pretty degenerate, and it was pretty um you didn't have to think too hard about it.
Okay.
And I think Charlie was right in that sense. But once people kind of understood how to deal with that up tilt spam and people were like, SDIing a lot more, um, and just kind of doing the basic Ryu counterplay, I think there were a lot of people who didn't really take the time to learn the matchup and like how to actually whiff punish those up tilts.
Hmm.
Um, but once people started to do that, it was a lot harder. And there were a lot of matchups that he just really shouldn't have been able to do. Like, um, his recovery was so exploitable as well. It should have been really, really easy to kill him off stage just because he has to Tatsu. He didn't even have directional air dodge in that game, so there was even less ways that he could recover. Um, so I think by the end of the game, he was quite hard, and there were only a couple of people, and maybe even a couple of people is too generous. I think I was the only person doing a lot of the stuff that I was doing with Ryu. Um, a lot of the like more complicated footstool confirms, I felt like I was the only person who was actually pulling them off in tournament. Um, as well as converting off of like a single up tilt to make sure that people weren't able to SDI.
Mm-hmm.
There were points in time where you'd have to like up tilt and then you'd have to like jump forward, be reverse Shoryu or something in order to actually like get that kill.
Yeah.
And that made things really, really tough.
I
So
imagine.
yeah, I think to a certain point he was quite brain dead and there was a lot of stuff that you didn't have to think about. I remember when I would stream, a lot of the times I would be like, monitor here, I'd be playing Smash on, monitor over here would have chat, and I would just be staring at chat, and I'd be holding one direction on the control stick, and I'd be C-stick nairing across the screen. And if I heard myself connect with a nair, I could look over and convert, and then get my full combo. And that was definitely a lot lower effort mentally. But that was also just playing on stream against random people online and not, the tournament environment.
Of course. I mean, I understand the meta with Ryu because here in Argentina, the best player in like during the second half of the Smash 4 meta was a Ryu Main. Literally, it was pretty bizarre because they lived like in the north of the country, and all the tournaments were like in the middle. Like they had to travel by plane to come to every tournament, and in
Wow.
and in their province, they were alone. Nobody was playing. Nobody was playing there. They practiced online, only online. So they just came to the tournaments to every monthly, and they won it every single one with Ryu. It was amazing, and they didn't, and that happened to Ultimate as well. I'm gonna get into that later though. So
Cool.
going back to Smash 4 and your trajectory during the latest months of the meta, you picked up Bayo. I mean, I'm not surprised. You're one of the like out of the top 50 BGR contenders of the top 100. Like half were Bayo mains or picked up Bayo at some point, so I'm not surprised. But why did you pick up Bayo?
So there were a couple of matchups that were um, just not fun with Ryu.
Okay.
Um, it's the ones that I think about immediately off the top of my head. Sonic was really rough, just because he had so many multi hits in his kit, and it was certainly doable. And there were a couple of Ryus out there who were really good at that matchup.
Hmm.
Um, I did not match up very well against Sonic players. So that was one that I picked up for Sonic. And then Rosa was the other big one.
Yeah.
Um, Especially because there was a period of time where I was living in New York, and going to their locals and stuff. So I was playing against DeBuzz quite often. Um, and it was like every week I would just get like blown up by his Rosa, and I was just like, all right, like I need a better answer to this, and I need to figure something out.
Hmm.
Um, and I was never able to do it, even with the Bayo. The closest I came was actually playing Zelda, which was kind of like a niche counter pick. I ended up picking up specifically for Bayo, or sorry, for Rosa.
Did it work?
But I at the very last Smash 4 tournament I ever entered, which was DreamHack Atlanta, I believe it was 2017. Um, I took him to last hit game 3 coming out of pools with the Zelda.
Awesome.
But not ever actually got a set. He was the one person in Smash 4 that I felt like no matter how much I played him, I couldn't figure out how to actually beat him.
Kind of sucks. So how do you feel about your trajectory during Smash 4?
Um, I really wish the game, like people competed in the game for just like a little bit longer. I felt like I was starting to get really, really good at some of the confirms and some of the stuff that I was doing.
Hmm.
Um, Specifically in some of the more complicated Ryu stuff, like the footstool combos and that sort of thing. Um, it really was starting to feel like a one-touch game for me, where if I could get an opening, there was usually a way I could find a kill, and that was really exciting. And I really liked having that kind of explosive play style where there's no way that I'm ever out of a game. I can always bring it back. Um, so to kind of have that cut like right when Ultimate came out, um, it felt like a little bit too soon for me in specific.
Hmm.
Um, Other than that, I was pretty happy with how fast I felt like I was able to kind of like climb the ranks. And like I don't feel like it took me an extremely long time to get where I wanted to be. It took a
Hmm.
lot of effort, obviously, but um, I always felt like I had the mind for competition, and that kind of carried me forward. So yeah, I was really happy with that.
Awesome. Did you like playing Smash 4?
Yeah, I really enjoyed it. I thought the meta was really fun. Um, and I was in a pretty unique situation where I specifically thought Ryu beat Bayo. And it was just so much Bayo, and I found that I was better at that matchup than most of the people in the reverse, just because there's not that many people playing Ryu, but there's a
Yeah.
lot of people playing Bayo.
Hmm.
So I really enjoyed that. Yeah, I thought the game was a lot of fun. I
Do
think
you
my
miss?
main issue with Ultimate.
Yeah.
Sorry, one more time.
No, continue with what you were saying. I'm gonna ask the question later.
Yeah, I think my main issue with Ultimate is just like um one thing I really enjoyed doing in Smash 4 was um just playing really aggressively. I felt like you could get away with a lot more jump ins and a lot more like actually kind of like in your face pressure,
Hmm.
where in Ultimate that seems a lot harder to do with everyone being able to do anything out of a dash. Um, I remember the game was coming out and everyone was like, "Oh my god, you can do anything out of a dash. You're going to be able to move so fast. You're going to be able to play so aggressive." Um, I feel like it never really panned out like that because now you can just do everything out of a dash back as well.
Okay.
Um, so that kind of ended up feeling a lot different to Smash 4, where movement felt like quite a commitment no matter how you were moving. Um, you were always committing to something, if that makes sense.
No, I mean it does. I honestly don't know if I can see that.
Mm-hmm.
Because I've known a lot of I knew a lot of different players, and I've seen a lot of players that basically never. I think the meta evolved into now not many people using an aggressive style. I mean, there are
Yeah.
definitely characters that need an aggressive style in order to win, but uh, nowadays we have a lot of technical players that don't necessarily have to play aggressive to win, or maybe even campy players that don't necessarily have to get an aggressive mode.
Yeah.
Um, so I think it definitely depends, but I can see your argument there. My
Mhm.
question though was gonna be, do you miss playing Smash 4?
Yeah, I miss it, but we also still play it a bit more than I feel like other regions. BC is definitely a region that really likes Smash 4 as well. Um, so we still have tournaments for it like every couple of months. It's not every month, it's not every week, anything like that, but every couple of months we'll have it as a side tournament at an alt bracket, and then we actually get to still play it. So I miss it, but I'm happy that I am in an area where everybody still appreciates it and still kind of wants to play and compete in it, at least a little bit.
It's interesting. That's pretty weird, actually.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't seen anyone playing Smash 4 since 2009. Like offline, I haven't seen anyone playing Smash 4 since 2019, if I'm not mistaken. So it's pretty bizarre. Like actually going like the thought of going to a tournament and seeing a Wii U. That's kind of bizarre for me.
Yeah, and you kind of forget how different it is too. Like you're setting up the Wii U and then you realize like, oh man, I need a Wii remote to even like get into the game, like or I need to have a gamepad connected. Like how did we get into the game when we couldn't just use our our GameCube controllers to do that?
Yeah.
Um so yeah, it's definitely a little bit of a blast from the past, and it's definitely a lot more different than people remember it. I
Mhm.
feel like a lot of people kind of like look back at it, and I hear a lot of people saying that Ultimate is kind of just like Smash 4 2. But when you're kind of like playing them both in tandem, yeah, it feels a lot more different.
Yeah. I bet. So, how do you personally felt the transition from Smash 4 to Ultimate?
Um, like as a community, or specifically for me, or like
Both, if possible.
um, so it was just so. I mean, like COVID is so interesting that like it kind of had that effect where we had Ultimate for a little bit, and then it was kind of just like nothing for a year and a bit. Um, so that was really interesting. Um, I felt like for me, I remember the first thing I thought of when I picked up um, Ultimate for the first time. My initial thought was just like, why are my moves not coming out when I'm pressing the button? That was the first thing I kind of thought. I was like, this feels so weird. Like, I feel like I'm having delay, and I feel like I later found out that was just the Switch being the Switch and having the like native input frames of delay.
Mhm.
Um, but I ended up picking up Ridley just because he was the only character that I really felt like um his moves came out when I pressed the button. And he doesn't have very fast frame data, so I'm not super sure how that happened or why I felt that way.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, it was really interesting. I was just like, man, I don't know how to deal with this delay. Um, so that was really jarring for me. I stuck with Ridley for a while, and then when Terry came out, I was like, oh man, this guy's kind of like Smash 4 Ryu. I've got some good poke tools. I've got some strong aerials. I've got some ways I can kind of like make this work.
Mhm.
Um, and then I got like one tournament where I had a couple of results I was really happy with. I beat Gluto at one of the weekly right after Congo Saga, and that was probably my best win.
Mhm.
Um, or sorry, no, I didn't beat Gluto. I'm misremembering. I lost to Gluto. I beat Shuton before him. So I beat Shuton, and then I lost to Gluto in winners finals, and I lost to Shuton's Shulk in losers finals.
Yeah.
And so I kind of felt like I had that momentum, and I was like, okay, maybe I can kind of do this. Um, and then COVID hit, and I was
Yeah.
like, all right. And that hits extra hard when you're from a different country than the States.
Mhm.
Um, just because like we even when tournaments started up again in the States, like we just couldn't go to them because the borders were still closed. Um, so what felt like kind of more of a momentary break for everybody else was kind of like career halting for me. I felt like,
Mhm.
um, so that kind of hurt that transition, if that makes any sense.
No, it does. It happened to
Um,
quite a lot of players, mostly people that are not from the states, like you said.
yeah, yeah, I think it certainly hit a little bit harder for the people outside of the States. What was really cool though was coming back after the quarantine period and having everybody back and having everybody being really like excited to play and excited to be a part of the community and to, kind of show their love for the game again. I thought that was a really cool um, kind of period of time for the community.
It's awesome. I mean, not gonna lie, I you basically responded to four of the questions that I have, but in one sentence. But it's cool, you know. It was an amazing tale. Um, Going back to the actual game, I wanted to ask, how do you feel right now about the shadows in general in the current meta?
um, so I think that they can do things. How do I want to word this? They I have to think really hard about how I want to word this. I don't think they're incredible characters. Um, but I think with the type of game that Ultimate is, um, they can see success.
Mm-hmm.
The With where Ultimate is right now, there's just so many characters and there's just so many matchups and so many things that people have to be prepared for. And I think if you come up against a Shoto player and you're not ready for that style and you're not ready for how like it's just not going to go well for you.
Mm.
Um so I think it's kind of like that surprise factor a little bit. I do think that their recoveries are still quite bad. And there are some matchups in this game that are just like the recoveries are maybe even worse than they were in Smash 4. Um, an example is like if you're ever off stage against Palutena and she knows that like she knows the matchup,
Mm-hmm.
she can just counter you through the stage, um, and then just down air you afterwards because you will always have to Tatsu back to stage. And there's just like stuff like that where if you really know the matchups and you really put the time in, um, I think it's really tough for Shoto players.
Mm-hmm.
But there are also a lot of people who can't put in all that time because there's almost 100 characters, right?
Yeah.
So I think there's certainly a spot for them. It's just you might have to fight a little bit uphill.
I mean, I personally don't know, because well, what I was commenting earlier, the best player from the Smash 4 era, during the pre-pandemic era, they were they were still the best player in Argentina, like even
Mm-hmm.
possibly one of the best players in South America. And they've been playing with Ken and Ryu since this day one of Ultimate, and they won every single tournament they've been in Argentina, except for one weekly because things happened. Uh, and they even won tournaments in Mexico, Australia, and Paraguay, and I believe another region that I don't remember right now. uh, with the Shadows. Unfortunately, they stopped playing because work and pandemic.
Yeah.
But they went to a couple of tournaments after the pandemic and they won, but they just retired. And right now, one of the best players in Argentina is is a Shadow Main, but they actually also use Kazuya and Terry as well. They and like
Right.
this other player that is currently top four in Argentina is playing with the four FGCs, and they believe that I remember that they thought that Ken was sometimes the best and sometimes the worst. It really depends on the matchups, but and Kazuya is hard, but it's not the best, and out of the four, and that Terry was pretty consistent, but it was pretty weird to put it in a position on the tier list because Kazuya and Ryu just do a better work even if they are not as consistent as Terry.
Hmm.
I think that was the thing that they say because it's been already a month since they explained it to me. But
Yeah.
what do you feel about the four FGCs as a whole?
So yeah, I just, depending on who you talk to and also depending on like where they are at any given point, like you get different answers. Um what it comes down to for me is just like sometimes one of them is going to work better. Like um all of those characters can be played in such different ways as well.
Hmm.
Um I don't like giving like a definitive like I think this one is the best. I think if I had to, I would say Kazuya just has the highest potential because,
Mm.
you get your combo and it's pretty guaranteed. Um so I would say he's definitely the one that people could take the highest. Um but also it's just cuz like a lot of the people who play one FGC character play multiple FGC characters. Um and it's really hard to isolate why one of those character works better for them than the other ones, because I think that like they all have things that they're good at, but also each person's play style has things that they're good at.
Of course.
um so I try not to put too much weight on each of the like characters as a whole,
Hmm.
and it's just more about the person who's piloting them and then how they're doing that in each specific matchup, or player matchup even.
Of course.
um yeah, I wouldn't be able to give between the other three. I wouldn't be able to place them. I have days where I'm playing in bracket and I'm just like, I think Ryu would work really great here, and then he does. But I also have other times where I play Ryu and I'm just like, this is impossible. Like, how do you possibly deal with this? Um, so yeah, it's kind of interesting like that.
Yeah, I bet.
Um, I think when people are really shameless about counterplaying fighting game characters, um, Ryu and Ken get really hard. I think they have a matchup that's almost unwinnable. And I don't talk about it a ton because I don't want myself to get counterpicked by it eventually. But I think Ridley is almost unbeatable, by Ryu or Ken.
I know.
Um,
I know this.
it's really bad for Ryu and Ken.
Yeah. I know because the best player right now in Argentina is a really main,
Yeah.
and the this FGC main basically almost never wins against this really main. So I understand what you're saying.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest glaring weakness is just the fact that like the FGC characters can't really go off stage. Um and then also like if your opponent's on ledge, like Ridley's ledge hang in specific is quite low.
Hmm.
Um there's no move that Ryu or Ken has on stage that hits them on ledge.
Hmm.
Um so they have to actually like jump off stage if they want to hit you while you're hanging around on ledge, and then you just like hang around off stage, and you if you have a lead, like they have to take some crazy risk and put themselves in a situation where they might get put off stage and just lose the game,
Yeah.
or lose a stock really early.
Hmm.
um, so I think once people get a little bit more shameless about planking them, like I think also if you're playing Ryu or Ken versus a Steve, they can just sit off stage and there's just not a whole lot you can do. You could break the crafting table and force them to kind of come back on stage, but then usually you're losing a whole bunch of stage control and you're letting them get back on stage for free.
Yeah.
So there's kind of weird matchup stuff like that they kind of have to deal with too.
I bet. So this is kind of a casual question, but what's Terry's worst skin?
Oh, I just always play default for Terry. I don't even remember a lot of his other ones. Um, I'm a fan of the yellow one.
Why?
Um, it might be the Neo Geo one. That one might be the worst, just because it's like it's just worse default. Is that gonna get me crucified? I feel like it might.
I don't know. I know a lot of people that play with the Neo Geo skin, but the yellow one for me is just the worst.
I mean, I also play Yellow Ridley, so like,
No, yellow
um,
really is goated. Don't worry.
oh well, then why don't you like the yellow one for Terry?
It's I don't know if I can see someone actually like wearing a yellow jacket and a yellow cap and be like, yeah, I'm gonna use this for to get out. Like it just for me it just doesn't make sense.
Yeah,
Uh,
fair.
I don't know. I don't know who is the character is actually. If Terry used a yellow like skin in their games, or if it's representing a certain character, but I personally will just prefer it to be another color to represent another character instead of having the yellow one for me at least.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
I'm not sure if where that comes from either.
yeah.
I haven't thought too much about it, but I do like the color.
hmm So I remember that a while back you used to have an alter ego known as One Hand. When did you start playing with one hand, and do you still have the ability to do so?
So I started when I was quite young. I really enjoyed playing Smash, but um I didn't have people to play it with.
hmm
I kind of wanted to play more, and so I would ask my sister. I'd be like, "Hey, can you play with me? Like, do you want to play Smash?" And she would be like, "No, because you're just gonna win." Um, and then I eventually was just like, "Okay, well, like, what if I play with one hand? Like, would you play with me then?" And she was just like, "Okay, like, you're not gonna win, but like, okay." And I didn't to begin with, but I played enough like that where I kind of got comfortable kind of like palming my controller kind of like a ball,
hmm
and I play with kind of the like inside of my hand. um and yeah, I'm still able to play like that, and that's um yeah, that was kind of an interesting way that I or an interesting thing I did. It kind of became more of like a party trick than anything, but there were a couple of tournaments where I was just like, I don't feel like try harding super hard. Let's just, you know, see how far I can get playing with one hand.
Yeah, I remember the list of upsets you made with one hand in that tournament, and I was like, wait, what the hell is this? Where's Locus? Like, what's this one hand? UBC one hand. What is this? Um,
Yeah, I think the best I did, or like my best win with it, there was a there was a time where Lima was doing like a, you do a best of 5 money match against me, and if you win, you have to buy, um I think it was controller buttons, from a vendor that he was friends with.
mhm.
Um and I was just like, okay, I'll play with. I went and I sat down. And he's like, I'm not gonna play against you. Like, it was Ryu versus Bayo, and he didn't like the matchup a whole lot. And I was like, okay, what if I play with one hand? He's just like, okay. And then I 3-0'd him with, and I can only play Falcon. I can't really play other characters.
Yeah.
I'm really bad at playing other characters. So it was specifically Falcon because I could kind of cheese with like Raptor Boost and stuff. Um, but yeah, it was a lot of fun.
Damn. So, E3 2019 was going to announce at least one new fighter for the first Fighter Fest. Like me, you were one of the members of the community who were skeptical about Banjo-Kazooie inclusion into the roster. You were so sure about this improbability that you offered to 10,000 coaching. You were offering 10,000 coaching sessions for free. If that bear with his bird got into the game. Did you fulfill your arrangement after that low to bottom tier character was announced?
Um, so yeah, that was certainly interesting. I didn't expect it to be. I didn't expect Banjo to get in. Um, So what I ended up doing was I just kind of like, I mean, there's 10,000 people, right? So I couldn't, do that just through like a booking form or something. I was like, okay, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to open up a Discord server, and anybody who wants coaching, you can hop in the Discord server. And then I'll just start streaming. And then if anybody wants to do free coaching, I'll just pull them from the Discord into a chat channel. We'll talk about stuff for a little bit, see where it goes. And then I'll have them done and I'll kind of move on to the next person. um, and I quickly found out that that was not impossible to do, but it just would have taken forever to get all the way through everything. So I did quite a few of those streams though, and that was a really kind of cool way to build a community and to just kind of give back a little bit for my hubris. Um, so I don't think I could humanly even finish 10,000 hours before now. Like I think I still would have about a year's worth of time left, even if I was coaching straight through. Um, but I definitely still do a lot of free coaching. There are a lot of people who just come to me and they're like, "Hey, like, can you help me with this thing?" And I'm just like, "Yeah, like, let's have a conversation about it and let's see what we can figure out." Just because enjoy, I enjoy coaching and I enjoy helping people, figure that stuff out.
Awesome. How do you got yourself into coaching in general?
So it started in Smash 4 yet again. There was a period of time where mid-set coaching was legal.
I remember, yeah.
Um, and so that's kind of how it got started. I was coaching for a couple of people, and I that's kind of what got me started, just like being really interested in how people think when they're playing and like what info they actually need. I felt like I had a really good handle on like why people do well and like what successful people think about when they're playing and that sort of thing.
Hmm.
Um, and then I started thinking about it more, and I realized like the more people I talked to and the more mid-set coaching I did, I realized I knew very, very little. And that's kind of what sparked that passion to figure out more.
Hmm.
And then so I started doing the individual coaching in between. Um, and yeah, that's kind of what brought me to where I am today. And I've done a lot of kind of like self research since then. Um, and done a lot of kind of like looks into sports psychology just to see what I can apply.
Hmm.
And now I kind of feel like I have a lot of tools where if anybody comes to me with a problem, I usually have something that can help them. And if I don't have an exact answer, I at least have a framework where we can kind of figure it out together, which is a really cool feeling.
Yeah, I bet. So, do you feel happy about how Ultimate ended, or will you have like something or someone else added?
Um, Man, I don't know if I'll ever really be happy with Ultimate. But the only thing that I would change, I actually think the game is quite fun, and I really enjoy playing it offline. I think the only two things I would change is it needs a way to be played online in a way that's accessible and a way that um, isn't just so painful to play. um, and then it also really needs the input delay that's on the Switch. Like if they released like an ultimate HD or like a, something like that where they have it on a different console that doesn't have the like 6 native frames of input delay. Like people don't really think about that a ton, but it makes a big difference having that 6 frames of input delay that you just can't really do anything about.
Hmm.
Um so those would be the only things that I would really like want to change or really um yeah, if it had both of those things, I think it would be an incredible game.
Yeah.
I've been playing a lot of Guilty Gear, like Strive, and just being able to boot up and like play against anyone, like from such big distances and not having to worry about connection and like that sort of thing, like it does make such a big deal. Um, and I can just imagine the world where Ultimate has that. I think it would be so cool, but yeah, I just don't think. Yeah, I don't think it'll get there.
I don't think so either. As unfortunate as it is, I just don't think so either.
Yeah, it would be amazing though. I think
It
that
would be
the
really cool.
game would be, yeah, like imagining a world where in the pandemic Ultimate had rollback netcode and we could just do online tournaments over and over and over again, and like I think that would just push the game so far and also just push all the players alongside it.
Of course.
Because that's what's really exciting about competition to me. I don't feel like I'm super attached to any specific game, but I really like the um, watching metas kind of adapt and grow,
Hmm.
and like kind of watching people take new steps to counterplay the best options, and like that kind of like back and forth is really what's most exciting to me. Um, so having a way to play online and like practice, like even a good training mode, I think would go a long way
Yeah.
for just kind of propelling the game forwards. So I think those are my biggest gripes with Ultimate.
Mm. I mean, at least like an official training mode, not like
Yeah.
not like the one we have, because there are a lot of unofficial gaming modes that are like training modes that are really good, but unfortunately they're unofficial, and you have to basically pray for the Switch to not blow up
Yes.
if
Yeah.
you upload them. So
A little bit risky.
yeah, exactly. So how do you
Um,
feel? Sorry, you were saying?
oh, sorry, go for it.
No,
I was going to say something and then I actually 100% forgot what I was going to say. So you go, and if I remember it, I'll bring it back up.
no. Okay, so how do you feel about Steve getting banned?
Um, so in the same vein as what I mentioned before, I really like seeing metas adapt.
Mhm.
And I really like seeing new options come to light. And I really enjoy seeing people who put in the work to get to that point be rewarded. Um, I think they're so yeah. I don't think that I understand why people want him banned. Um, and I mean, we're still kind of in the like phase where some people kind of or some regions have him banned and some don't and
Mhm.
everything. But it just I feel like it robs the players that want to try really hard um, from having that ability to like actually lab out situations and stuff.
Of course.
Really good example of this is Big D going to all of these big events and starting to do really well now.
Mhm.
Um, you'll see him post and stuff on his Twitter every once in a while, like ways that he's dealing with specific Steve options.
Yeah.
Um, and like then you see him play against people like Akala, and like he was the only person to take a set off of Akala at Summit.
Yeah.
Um, and it's because he was, he took the time and the care to actually um, to figure that matchup out. So it kind of feels like we're robbing people of the chance to grow and to make those adaptations, because that's kind of what I feel like competition is really about.
Yeah. I mean, in my opinion, I also don't think that Steve should be banned. Um, I mean, it is pretty weird to notice if you can input the PMLG and on tournaments, but I don't think that's a good
Yeah.
excuse to actually ban him. And even then, in my opinion, maybe because it's biased, and here in Buenos Aires we don't have a Steve Main. There
Hmm.
isn't anyone that broke the camel's back and be like, hey, we need to ban Steve. Like other regions, and even in South America, there are Steve Mains that are making a lot of progress to the character, and
Right.
but at the same time, I can think of two things. First of all, I don't think Steve is that broken. It's a hot take, I know, but for in my opinion, I don't think that Steve is the best character in the game.
Yeah,
Uh,
we just haven't really seen that yet.
yeah,
Like there's one Steve who's really really consistent, and that's Akala.
yeah,
And then there's a couple of others that are quite good, like are very good, but were also very good players beforehand.
exactly.
Um and I understand that watching Steve can be quite jarring because he's doing things that other characters can't really do. Um so I can understand that, but at the same time, um yeah, I don't like many of the arguments that people are making for banning Steve. Um,
Me neither.
like it's I understand why people are making the arguments that they're making. Um, but a lot of them can be applied to other characters as well.
Yeah.
So then when they're not applied to those other characters as well, then it kind of becomes weird. Like a lot of the arguments I was hearing were like, "Oh, well, people are like quitting because of this character." And I'm like, "Okay, well, if there are people quitting because of Min Min, like, do we go there? Like, if people are quitting because of Kazuya, like, do we go there? Like, um,
Yeah.
as well as like, people are like, well, he's just not really a Smash character. It's like, okay, are we taking out Little Mac as well? Like, or Hero even like a character with like RNG crits and like you have to be able to read a different language if you aren't a native English speaker and you're coming over to like compete. Or vice versa. There's a
Yeah.
lot of stuff that um, can be applied to multiple arguments, and yeah, I think I'd just rather people, if he's really really that good, and he's gonna be like ruining competitions. We just haven't seen that yet, um, and like as bad as it might sound, like I kind of want to see that. Like I think it'd be really interesting to have a lot of Steve players pop up and have them all start to do really, really well. And then for people to be able to look at Steve and be like, okay, this is a problem character. Like we have to figure out how to deal with this. And then start to like pull out cool options to deal with minecart and like lab ways to deal with blocks.
Yeah.
Like that was kind of the thing with Bayo in Smash 4 was like there were a lot of people who were like, this character is absurd, and she was incredible. Um, but there were also the people, like myself included, I would lab Bayo specific things where like because she has a different air dodge, I could get a lot of like really cool resets on her.
Mm-hmm.
Where like combos that wouldn't be true on other characters would be true on her as long as I was preparing for that, like covering the bats as well.
Yeah.
Um, and just interesting stuff like that. And I like that part about competition a lot.
I mean, for me, if even if Steve gets banned, for example, if in my opinion, if I host a tournament, I will put like gentlemen's. Like if you want to play with Steve, you have to ask the other player if it's okay to use Steve because most people will not say no. They will be like, yeah, okay, play with Steve. I don't care. So I think it should be a gentleman's if they want to ban Steve. At least that's my take.
Yeah.
But I
I
don't
think
know.
that's yeah, it's interesting as a gentleman's. I've always been a TO that like I just don't allow gentlemen's rules.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it just leads to a lot of like um tough situations. Like
How so?
for example, if you're a player who um is like it's more kind of like social pressure stuff. So like let's say the best player in the region is a Steve player, but you really think that like Steve should be banned.
Mm-hmm.
Um, do you like risk kind of looking like an asshole and like not do the gentleman's? Or sorry, yeah, like not do the gentleman's and say like, hey, sorry, like no, I'm not gonna let you play Steve. Especially if the person who's playing Steve is like pretty well liked. Like there's just weird dynamics that go on there with gentlemen's where you're kind of like dealing with people's perceptions and their emotions a little bit too. Um Yeah, and I kind of believe that like nobody should be put in that position as a tournament goer. Um, it should be the tournament organizer who's making the rules and setting them out, and then if people don't like them, then you can have that conversation.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, does that make sense?
Yeah, I think it does.
For the same reason, like probably a better example is like somebody's controller gets unplugged during a game.
Hmm.
For me, that is like always, always, always you lose that stock. You just continue on with the game.
Yeah,
No matter like there are a lot of players who would just be like, oh yeah, just like plug back in and we'll just keep going. But like you never want the player to feel like they have to make that call um because of like social pressures and that sort of thing. Does that
of
make
course.
sense?
Yeah, it does. Um, the thing that I can imagine right now is it's a typical of third player accidentally connects.
Yeah.
Uh, that sometimes that for some players it's like, well, just for a critical moment. For example, it happened in a tournament that a player accidentally connected their pro controller and pressed the home button.
Mm-hmm.
And the two players and one player was like, well, let's just continue the game, and the other was like, no, let's restart the game. And that kind of gets in the way of thinking from different players. um
Yeah.
I just don't personally see it like as an issue with gentlemen's in Steve, though. I can imagine
Yeah.
in the other cases, but I think you
But
will.
even imagine like you have somebody who um is really well liked in the community. Well, yeah, I don't know. It does weird stuff for like rankings and stuff as well.
Mhm.
Like, how do you really do rankings if sometimes a player gets to play Steve and like sometimes they don't get to play Steve? Um, as well as even just like bracket paths are really hard to make in a way that's fair, because are you going to seed this person high because you're expecting them to be allowed to play Steve in all their sets, or are you going to seed them low because you think their round two is going to tell them that they have to play a different character that they might not be comfortable on? There's a whole bunch of like little things that I think makes the gentleman's tough. Um, but I do think that he probably shouldn't be banned, at least not yet. Um, yeah.
Okay. It kind of confused me, the second argument you made about like I think you mentioned about seating.
Yeah.
Um, wouldn't that? I mean, it makes sense to a certain point. Like for example, when I seed, it's mainly about overall skill plus recent results. So in the case of Steve, for example, if I'm organizing an event that has Steve banned, but you can gentlemen, I will I will not I will search the recent results, but mostly I will value their overall skill, not with just Steve. I think the skill will
Yeah.
matter more than the character they can or cannot use.
Yeah, and maybe I just have a different view on this, but at least for me, what skill is seeing all of these situations over and over with a character that you're comfortable with, and like knowing how to be ready for those.
Hmm.
Like I think that's a big part of skill. Like even like I don't even know if overall skill exists. Um, to a certain extent, like you'll know how to deal with specific options that you've seen from specific characters,
Hmm.
but past that, I just think so much of your skill is tied to how do I deal with this option? Well, I use this move with this character. How do I deal with this option? I use this move with my character. And a lot, just so much of that is lost when thinking about playing a different character. Um, so it's hard, and you don't want to set up somebody like if you seed them as if they're gonna be able to play Steve the whole time. Um, it's just hard because you do want to have a fair bracket. Um, because seeding does matter.
Yeah.
Um, but if you put them too low, suddenly they're going to be playing somebody who's really, really good early. Um, and then like maybe they get to play Steve, maybe they don't. But I just imagine those brackets are going to look really, really volatile. And there's a lot of kind of like weird social pressure stuff where if you run into somebody who's seated low because they aren't going to be, or like they might not be able to play Steve, then do you allow them to play Steve and like be the homie, or like, and then potentially like screw your own bracket over, or do you yeah, there's just a lot to think about there.
Okay, I understand. So
Yeah.
going back to the questions, how do you feel about the level of the competitive scene right now in British Columbia in comparison to other NA scenes?
BC is incredible, and I think BC is I okay, there's a couple of different directions I want to take this. Um I think BC is incredibly strong. I think a lot of regions are incredibly strong right now, but I think BC is kind of finally having its moment where we're like, hey, we are like really good at this. And I think like I think I kind of had that moment in Smash 4 where like a lot of the people in the region saw me doing really, really well, and they're like, oh, well, like at that time I was third in BC and I was doing really, really well, and they were like, okay, well, why can't we do this? And then they started to, right? Like Captain L started doing extremely well. Their tournaments where Big D would take out a whole bunch of top names as well. Like, and I think that Ouch kind of did that for BC in Ultimate,
Mm-hmm.
where he started doing really, really well at some of these events. And we're just like, okay, well, if we could take sets off of Ouch, then like maybe we can do it. Now Dawson's kind of doing the same thing, Big
Yeah.
D, where like we have people in region who beat him like regularly. Um, so I think that we're just kind of starting to have that moment where we're having this big confidence boost from all of these results. And I think a lot of players are kind of rising with that tide, which I think is really exciting, especially moving into Battle of BC in May or June. I'm really bad with dates.
It's in May, yeah. May.
Yeah.
Yeah, May. So how do you go into commentary?
Yeah, so I think I'm doing top 24 commentary on Sunday.
Mm-hmm.
Which will be really fun. I did top 24 last year as well. And got to commentate a couple of really, really sick sets. Ouch
Yeah.
versus MVD is one that comes to mind immediately, where they kind of went back and forth and it was just really high octane.
Yeah, it was.
So yeah, I'm really excited for that, especially with the caliber of talent that's coming out to that event. It's the Canada's first super major, which is crazy, at least for alt. Which I think Gommel might have been able to do it if not for all of the like border stuff and all the COVID stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And Gommels have always been incredible, but it's really cool just to see how, yeah, just the caliber of talent. There's not even that crazy amount of entrants yet, but just the people who are coming, like it really is the best of the best, and that's a real testament to the people who are running it and all the outreach they've been doing.
Yeah. Yeah, it's pretty. It's gonna be pretty awesome. I cannot wait to see it. So, as far as I'm aware, you have been helping out TOs in different scenes and even organizing a bunch of different events for different games yourself. How do you got yourself into it, and do you have any advice for any TOs who will be watching?
Um, okay, so this might sound like pretty doomy advice at the moment. I think now is probably not the greatest time to get into esports.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's a lot of things that you can do that will put you in a really, really good spot if you want to get into esports.
Mm-hmm.
But as someone who kind of tried doing it from, so I kind of just started as a player and then I started organizing events and then kind of just went from there. Um, and then I found a position in esports where I was doing TOing, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I was running events over and over and like doing that sort of thing. Um, I really wish that I had gotten like a degree in something that was going to help me with esports or like experience in some field beforehand.
Mm-hmm.
um I think that just helps so much, and if you want to put yourself in a position where you're going to be ready for when esports is in a better spot, because I'm sure most of you have heard a lot of the stuff going around, like all these big teams are having to drop players because of where the economy's at right now. And also people just pulling money out of esports, us not having the crypto money that was kind of like keeping us afloat for a while. um, so I think all of this, if you're trying to kind of like put yourself in a position to be ready for when esports does have an uptick again, because I think it will.
Yeah.
There's too much interest in it for it not to trend upwards again at some point. I think that just bettering yourself, learning as many skills as you can, um, is going to put you in the best spot possible for when that comes around. I wouldn't recommend anybody try and start there. Um, yeah.
Okay. I'm saying because I'm starting to making more tournaments, and I
Mhm.
wanted a couple of advices. But I understand the position of making tournaments in the current esports meta. Uh, with many huge huge esports organizations dropping out, and mainly Smash not being the greatest esports scene, and having a lot of um, or not even having any support from their publishers and Nintendo in general.
Yeah.
Um, Although my take on it is that it definitely differs from community to community. Like I feel
Yeah.
that
I think it, yeah, sorry. I'll just clarify too. I think it depends on the scale as well.
yeah.
If you have the um if you have the bandwidth to run tournaments and they aren't going to cost you a lot of money and they're not going to be something that's going to prevent you from making a living and putting yourself in a good position, I think that's probably what the community is going to need up until things get better.
Yeah.
Um, so I think that kind of stuff is really, really crucial. But when you're thinking about, like it being on the scale of like, larger events, how do I get into like TOing bigger stuff? Like it's just not great for it right now. But if you are going to have the bandwidth to do something that isn't going to, put you into debt or like
No, of course,
isn't going to
no.
be super difficult for yourself, then like doing that is going to be the best experience possible to get you to the point that when things get better,
No,
you're
of
ready
course.
for
I
it.
mean, I'm not saying that I want to make a living out of TOing. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying
Right.
that, at least in my case, I want to try to make the best tournaments that I can for the community and for the community to grow. And I have the opportunity and the sponsors from that could help me with the progress and with the money and with different stuff. So
Mhm.
once I'm there, the once I'm TOing, what are some advices that you can give? Not the
Um, it's just so. I guess the best advice that I could give you a little bit more generally
mm-hmm,
is just to listen to the communities that you're servicing, because um I've participated in a lot of tournaments where TOs are um and I'm definitely not accusing you of this because you seem like super reasonable. But there are a lot of TOs who get pretty stuck into one way of how they want to do things,
mm-hmm.
and then aren't able to um, kind of adapt to whether it's the community changing or just people's, like what they want changing.
Mm-hmm.
And that hurts them a lot. So like take some time after every event that you run and like talk to somebody and see what they liked, see what they didn't like, see how they felt about things.
Yeah.
And I think as long as you're doing that and you're listening, um a lot of the other pieces are going to fall in place,
Mm-hmm.
because people will see that you're genuinely caring about the stuff that you're doing and these events that you're putting on. And I think that counts for more than people might expect.
Of course. Yeah, I think that I completely understand. That's basically what I actually did. I tried to run a couple of tournaments because I live an hour or 2 hours from the main region of where people run events. So I wanted to
Mhm.
create tournaments in my region, and the second one that I did, I just couldn't. I It didn't work because nobody was coming. Like only like
Mhm.
6 or 7 people got into the event. So I asked like TO from the region. I said, "You have to do it. You have to do the tournaments here, not in your region, because nobody's gonna go." And I was like, "Yeah, I think I think I have to." So the tournament that I'm currently running is in the main region, and focus that. Oh, sorry, what's my cat? Yeah, I actually had I basically needed for my tournaments to go well. I needed to change. I needed to travel and needed to get the best venue I could find in order for it to work and in order for people to come. Um, but I think talking with the community is the best thing you can do while organizing an event, as you said.
Yeah, I think so too. Cuz honestly nobody's going to know better than the people in the community what they want. And that doesn't mean bending to literally everything that people ask of you, because that's a problem for new TOs as well. They'll hear one point of critique and they'll be like, all right, let's swap everything. But I think as long as you're listening to the people that are coming to your events and like taking everything into consideration,
Of course.
you'll be in a really good spot moving forwards.
Yeah. So we've been talking a lot with Locus. Now I want to talk with Mason for a little bit. So tell us, what do you like to do besides playing video games?
um so I've been playing piano my whole life, so that's probably the biggest one for me.
Mm-hmm.
I've been playing piano since I was probably 3 or 4 years old, so that's probably
Damn.
the biggest one. Um, and then besides that, I do in-person sales right now as my job, so I spend a lot of time um, working. So I don't have a ton of free time at the moment. Um, I spend my weekends just kind of like recuperating and playing the occasional game.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I'm still playing Strive and kind of like partially thinking about competing in that. Really excited for Project L when that comes out. Because I'd love to maybe compete in that as well. But I've always
Yeah.
been a very competitive person. I competed in piano stuff when I was really young. Um, so I spend a decent amount of my spare time on that still.
How did you got into this competitive mindset?
Um, just through doing it. Um, you just kind of have to start somewhere, and for me, I like luckily I kind of got pushed into it by my parents who were kind of like, hey, like you're gonna play piano. And I was like, okay. I am going to play piano. And then I was competing on stage and like performing on stage from when I was 5 or 6 years old. So it comes pretty naturally when you're kind of forced to do it from that young.
Mm-hmm. So as far as I, so as I kn- so as far as I knew, you're from Saskatchewan.
Yep.
So how is it actually traveling back and forth from BC and your home region?
Yeah, it's I mean the flight price is probably the biggest gateway.
Yeah.
Especially in the last few years, the flight prices have been insane. But I am very close with my family, and I do miss seeing them a lot. So I do try and go back like once, usually for Christmas, and then once during the summer,
Hmm.
catch up with them and to see friends and that sort of thing. Um, I do enjoy the weather in BC a lot better. Um,
Really?
do you guys do Celsius or Fahrenheit?
Celsius.
Okay, so yeah, in Saskatchewan winters, it's pretty regularly like -40.
Damn.
Um, yeah, so it's rough, and the coldest it gets here is like -5, maybe -10 in like really rough situations, but it almost never. So it's nice to be able to go outside and to spend time, like walking around and just kind of like seeing nature, being near the water and stuff as well. Vancouver is really gorgeous, and it's really nice to kind of have that option of mentally resetting and like going on a walk.
Hmm.
Whereas if you do that in Saskatchewan, like you're going to freeze.
So I bet you're team summer over team winter.
um I think I'm team winter now that I'm in a place where winter is manageable. um I like having do I actually have a reason why I like winter more? I think I do like winter more.
Just because.
Um it's it's really rainy here in winter, and I love the rain.
Hmm.
Um it's just so relaxing, and it gets some people down, but I find that it's more relaxing than anything for me at the very least.
Yeah.
Um and then summer sometimes is just like a little bit too hot. We had a heat wave the other year that, or I guess this was just last summer, we had a heat wave where it was like 52 degrees during the day. Um, and then at nighttime, it would only cool down to like 33 or 35.
Yeah.
Um, and that's probably not that crazy compared to a lot of places, but BC is a place that's usually pretty temperate. So we don't really, like, nobody really has air conditioning. Nobody really has like, in the summer you just open your window and you get a fan going and that's your.
Yeah.
So when it's getting up to positive 50 and nobody has air conditioning, like that was
Sucks.
rough.
Yeah. I bet.
um but that's also less common. That was just something that happened pretty recently, so it's kind of been on my mind.
No, I mean it happened also here. It was like positive 45 a couple of days, and regularly it was between 35 and 40. It was awful.
Yeah.
And there were a lot of power outages because so many people were using air conditioners at the same time in an area.
Right.
So it was really rough. And still I see people like tweeting, "Oh yeah, Team Summer is amazing," and I'm like, "Shut the hell up." And I'm like, honestly, I rather freezing than having an open window, mosquitoes getting into the house, and relying on an air conditioner that will just shut down at any moment.
Yeah, that's another weird thing about BC is we just, or at least about Vancouver, we just don't really have many bugs. um
Lucky.
Felt like in Saskatchewan we needed to have screens on all the windows, and we needed to make sure that like we weren't keeping them open very long and like stuff like that.
Hmm.
But here, like, there's no screens on any of the windows. You just open your window, and like most of the time, like, you just don't get any bugs. um which is also probably because we're in the middle of the city.
Yeah,
um the mosquitoes probably get worse the further you go out, but um that's certainly different because it was really bad in Saskatchewan.
I bet. God damn it, I bet. Uh, so in what ways has the pandemic affected you over your overall life aside of Smash?
um
If you're okay with that
I
question,
mean,
like, it's
yeah, no, that's a super fair question. For me, I was kind of doing esports stuff like while the pandemic was hitting.
mhm,
um and my life was pretty like tied in with esports at that point, so it's kind of hard to distance the two for me. um I was working with a company. We were doing in-person events,
Mhm.
so in-person like CS:GO tournaments, like that sort of thing, at a stadium. And then COVID hit, and then it was kind of like, well, it's not really a place for you here because you're running in-person events, and we're not going to be running in-person events anymore because it's COVID.
Yeah.
Um, so I definitely spent a period of time where I was like, okay, well, I guess I can't do that. Um, and then as they kind of pivoted back, they were like, okay, well, turns out we do need to figure out a way to have events. And that ended up looking like having just online events.
Mhm.
Um, and so for most of the pandemic, I was working from home running these online events, um, which was like a really nice way to kind of get back into the swing of things. I was jobless for a while during the pandemic, and that was really that's just really tough mentally.
Mhm.
Um, and now I feel like I've had a very low amount of social energy, like kind of getting back out into the world. But I started like a month ago doing like an in-person sales job.
Mhm.
So I just every day I have to be out talking to people, and I'm like interacting with like 300, 400 people a day.
Damn.
Um, and that just like kind of forces you to have that like social battery recharge, and it's just like, okay, I finally feel like I'm starting to become a person again after COVID and quarantine and everything, which is really nice.
Yeah. That's pretty cool. I mean, interesting way to like go back and talk about video games, but I completely understand. So, have you ever had COVID though?
Okay, I can hear you now.
Okay, cool. Had a problem with my Wi-Fi connection. Um,
Okay.
so, uh, have you ever had COVID?
I have not. I somehow
Really?
managed to dodge it for this long. Um, and it just never happened. Or there's the possibility that it did happen and I didn't recognize it as COVID, like whether it happened like before the pandemic kind of started.
Mm-hmm.
But if I had it, I'm not aware of it.
Right. Yeah, maybe there's a possibility of getting asymptomatic COVID. Uh,
Yeah, that too.
I had COVID 3 times already. I had COVID 3 times already.
Oh my goodness. And how was that experience?
First time I had COVID, was I got it because of I went to a party, like a birthday party from a friend of my fiance,
Mhm.
and half of the people there weren't vaccinated, and
Oh yeah.
and after the party, everyone but one kid got COVID, and I was lying there with with a pretty strong fever for 3 or 4 days, and then coughing for about 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And then the other two, I got asymptomatic COVID. So the test result came up positive, but I didn't have any symptoms.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, I've never had a positive test even. Um, yeah, which is interesting.
weird. So, here's where here's the third half of the third of the podcast. This is the lightning round questions. So here's the moment
Perfect.
where not necessarily you have to answer these questions as fast as you can, but nevertheless, there wasn't a specific stage of the podcast where I could throw these just random questions and meme questions. So,
Perfect. And I will warn you, I do have about 5 minutes left before I do have to dip, so we will lightning round these real quick.
oh shit, okay. So Locus, are you ready?
Yeah, I'm ready.
Okay, are you sure?
Yes.
Cool. So what's your character demon? This means a character that you hate fighting, even if the MU is favorable for Terry or Shadows.
Rosa and Smash 4, Min Min and Alt.
Damn.
Yeah.
What's your favorite video game outside of Smash?
Um, Hollow Knight. Yeah, Hollow Knight.
That's an amazing game.
Or Mother 3. It's in between the two of them.
Damn, those are two of my favorite games as well. Uh, Milk before cereal.
No.
Come on, is this the correct way to do
Okay, Mr. R.
it? So, ¿sabes hablar en español?
No.
I don't know if you understand what I said.
Did I answer correctly?
Uh, I asked if you knew how to speak in Spanish.
All right, I don't know how to speak Spanish, so there we are.
Okay. Aside from the tattoo on your left forearm, do you have any other tattoos?
Nope, it's just just the Hollow Knight one.
Oh, it is the Hollow Knight one. Wait.
Yeah, it's the symbol of the like King's Crest.
Oh my God, it's amazing.
Yeah, I was really happy with that. I got that like right as the pandemic was ending.
Oh,
And yeah, I've been really happy with it. I want to get the frog from Mother 3 that you save,
yeah,
but specifically the one that's in the car. I want the
yeah.
one in the little like red car.
Oh, that sounds. How was the
It's my next
process
one.
of tattoos? Like, there. How's how was it?
Yeah, it hurt really bad, but it only hurt for 2 hours when it was getting done, and now I get to have a cool looking thing on my arm for the rest of my life. So
I was
I'm here
actually
for it.
I was actually asking about the process after getting the tattoo.
Oh, that wasn't too bad. That's just keeping it clean and making sure that you're not like slamming your arm against things.
Of course. Why do you have a Charger blog as your Twitter banner?
Um, because I think he's my favorite Pokemon, and that banner my buddy Jacob made for me.
Yeah.
He was just like, "Hey, do you want this?" And I saw it, and it was just like, I don't want to say it's kind of shitty, but like it's just you can it. I'm somebody who really appreciates like bad humor, like kind of like dad jokes and just like things just being like a little bit off.
Okay.
Um, and I feel like the underline being like not straight, and then the charge bug looking a little bit wonky, and then having my name in like perfect like text, like it's perfect. Like I love it. I can't imagine changing my banner at this point.
Okay. Cool. So last question: who would you like to nominate so they could come to the podcast?
Ooh. Um. Interesting. Who have you already done? Is there
Uh,
anybody else that I might know?
like Canadians or or like Americans and Mexicans count as well.
Um. I'll send you um the tag. I think so this is kind of a hard recommendation to give because Samuel is like ridiculously busy.
Okay.
But he is the one of the directors for Battle of BC.
Yeah.
Um, just incredible guy too.
Yeah.
Like he knows so much about the scene. He cares a lot about the events that he puts on.
Mhm.
Um, and it'd be a really cool perspective, I think, for you if you're interested in TOing and kind of getting advice there. I think he's an awesome person to talk to.
I mean,
Um,
I hope he responds. Like
yeah.
you said, he has a really strong like a really busy schedule. So we have to
Yeah, it
wait.
might be easier after Battle of BC if you are kind of like scheduling things that far in advance, um but yeah, you can talk to him about that and see what he thinks.
Yeah. I'll see what happens. So here's where the podcast is coming to an end. Thank you so much to Locus. If the public wants to look up your social media, where they could find you.
Yeah, so it's all at Locus SK. Um yeah, I think everywhere it should be at Locus SK. I don't think there's anything I'm not at Locus SK. So if you want to find me anywhere, you want to book a coaching session, find me on Twitter at Locus SK.
So everyone who will be watching this, don't forget to follow me on Twitch or YouTube, so you cannot miss the chance to watch another podcast and a project that I will make in the future. So thank you everyone who will be watching this, and with this we say goodbye, live long and prosper. The game, goodbye.